Dr. Maz, how can I become work optional in 2025?
If you're a dentist, doctor, high net worth income professional, etc., you're probably doing pretty well financially, but you're missing a trick, and that is being work optional. 4 or 5 years ago, when I was working full time as a dentist, I was doing very well. I was making a lot of money financially every month, etc. But I came to the realization that working full time as a dentist, making £15,000 a month, whatever, yeah, it's good in terms of income, but it doesn't align with my long-term visions, my long-term goal. Because one of my major long-term goals was to leave the country that I was living in. I don't want to talk too much about the country, but increasing crime rates, the government clearly don't care about their constituents. Infrastructure is just failing, terrible roads. Generally, there's just no feeling of safety or comfort in that country, especially as someone who's brown, especially as someone who wants to live their life and wants to raise their children in a very conservative, traditional environment surrounded by the culture that we value, which is mosques, madrasas, even just the ability for our mothers, our wives, our sisters, our daughters to be able to walk the streets with a scarf on their head without feeling undue danger or the feeling that they're targeted by some crazy individuals. Now, it's very important that we don't position ourselves as victims, because unlike some other people, we don't walk through life as victims of everything in the world. We don't live our lives feeling as though everyone is targeting us. But we also have to look at the reality that yes, it's not super widespread. It's not going to happen every single time we leave the home. We're going to be targets of racism, but it does happen. And that is a factor to what made me want to leave that country. So I realized that at some point in the future, I need to be work optional so that I can be location independent. Because yeah, dentistry is an amazing career. If you can get over all of those headaches of the industry, you can find a good practice. You can find a practice where you're valued, where the principal isn't going to take advantage of you, where you've got good staff, where you've got good nurses, where you've got good patients, and all of those things are not easy to find individually, never mind all at one practice. So I realized that, okay, with regards to my long-term goals, dentistry does not align, because I can make a lot of money in the UK as a dentist, but that does not equate to me being location independent. I need to be at this practice at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. every single day, 5 days a week, and I need to be there for my patients. And that does not allow me to be location independent. And this is what I want you to think about very, very seriously, because as a professional who's doing very well, because that's my audience are dentists, doctors, as I said, high net worth professionals who are doing very well for themselves financially. I want you to tick off that last box, which is to be financially independent. That allows you location independence so that you can have the freedom to do or not do the things that you do or don't want to do. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I want for you, as I said, we use this term work optional so often, and I want to explain what that means. What that means is that as an individual, as someone who is responsible for their family, for their wives, for their children, for their parents, etc., I want you to have the ability to be work optional, meaning that if you really love your career, like a lot of our clients, like our oral surgeons, like our orthodontists, like our implant surgeons that we have, and like a lot of the practice owners that we have in our books, they love their career and they don't want to stop. That's fine. Also, what they don't want to do is to work 5, 6 days a week. They love their career, but they only want to work maybe 2, 3 days a week. And that is the position that we want to help you get towards, so that you can cut down 2, 3 days a week and you don't need to sacrifice your income. You don't need to sacrifice your lifestyle. And that is what investing gets you. That is what investing can do for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain exactly how you can become work optional in the next few years in a way that is reproducible, that is safe, it's consistent, that you can literally take this plan and you can give it to anyone and they will be able to reproduce it and become work optional. And also, obviously, in a way that is ethical, that aligns with our Islamic principles as well. And this is going to be a plan that is going to bring generational wealth, and it's also going to bring you blessings and barakah, because without those things, there's no blessing, there's no happiness, there's no enjoyment, there's no fulfillment in your wealth. I'm sure a lot of us knew people growing up who are making wealth, a lot of money, from impermissible ways, ways that were against the law. Now, a lot of those ways you can make a lot of money very easily, but what doesn't come with that easy money is sakina, tranquility, peace. Okay, so it's not difficult to make a lot of money, but to make a lot of money, generational wealth, that in a way that brings those blessings and brings that tranquility, again, even that's not even difficult. It just takes a little bit of consistency and a little bit of hard work. So let's get started. Now, firstly, why does this matter? Because I've been in your shoes where I was making £10,000, £15,000 a month as a dentist. And yeah, you're making amazing money, but you're only making that much money when you're in the dental chair, sitting and treating patients with your neck craned over patients, drilling teeth and doing all that kind of stuff. When you're not in the dental surgery, you're not making 10 to 15, £20,000 a month. That is the difference. That is the gap that we want to help you fill, so that you're still able to make really good money from your investment portfolio, potentially from passive income, while you're not at the dental surgery, while you're sitting, relaxing on the sofa, playing with your children, teaching your children how to play chess or playing games with them, that kind of thing. That is what we're talking about. Let's dive into the 6 main investment vehicles that we discuss with our clients, that we go into a huge amount of detail on, that we help build their portfolio in a beautiful, diverse way, so that they're not investing into ridiculously high risk opportunities that's constantly losing their money, that are essentially gambling on. This is not what we want. We want you to diversify so that the majority of your money is in nice, safe, consistent assets that is growing consistently over the long term. That's not just ridiculously high risk. First of all, stocks are an amazing asset class, but there's a couple of things that we do need to consider, right? Now, everyone talks about the S&P 500. You need to understand that the S&P 500 is a really good example of the stock market. Over the last 60 odd years, it has done approximately 8 to 10% returns average per year. Now, what you have to understand is that even with a huge amount of training, you're not going to become an expert stock market investor overnight. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of diligence. It's going to take a lot of education. So the majority of your stock market portfolio should be in a halal index. That's just what you just automate. You just give your money to every month and it just grows consistently over time. And potentially, after you've developed a little bit of competency, maybe some individual stocks. But what you need to understand is that it's very difficult to find companies on the stock market that are 100% ethical, 100% don't involve any interest, don't take any income from interest, don't hold too much debt, etc. So you can't say, I would say the majority of stocks on the stock market are 100% ethical or halal. But what the scholars recommend is that you understand, again, you have to learn this, is that you have to take the impermissible percentage of the profits from the companies that you're investing into in the stock market every year, and you have to give that percentage. It's usually less than 5% that you give of the profits from that company every year, and you just give it to charity, sadaqah. And that is called purging, okay? So yes, the stock market is a phenomenal asset class that I would definitely encourage everyone to get into, but you have to understand that it's very likely that your portfolio is not going to be 100% halal. But as I said, the scholars give a certain amount of leeway to the companies on the stock market, and it's usually around 5%. It's a lot more detailed than that. Make sure that you dive into that, and we do teach that in our agency, but please make sure you do your own due diligence. Don't just jump in with surface level understanding. And then the second asset class that we love in our agency is crypto. Now, crypto, unlike the stock market, it's also a phenomenal asset class, but the stock market has over 100 years of history, and we have over 100 years of understanding the patterns, the long-term patterns of the stock market. How does the stock market react when there's a bubble? How does the stock market react when there are wars? How does the stock market react when there are major economic crises? We understand overall, over the long term, how the stock market reacts. In crypto, we can make many parallels with the stock market and how the stock market reacts to crypto. And there are a lot of parallels, but it's not across the board rules that you can make because crypto is only 15 odd years old. It's a very young asset class, meaning it's much, much higher risk compared to gold or stocks. So I would definitely encourage you to look into crypto. But again, like everything else, make sure you do your due diligence. Do not invest without doing a huge amount of reading, studying about that asset class. Make sure you understand what you're investing into. Do not invest into it blindly. Do not invest into it just because your best friend or your uncle or your auntie or your mother dog told you about this asset class and everyone's getting into it suddenly. Please make sure you do your due diligence. And obviously, that's the main asset class that we have been investing aggressively into within our private community, which is my inner circle, over the last couple of years. And the primary reason for that is because it's been the fastest growing asset class. But that doesn't mean we've been putting the majority of our investable income into it because it's a high risk asset class. We put a smaller percentage of our portfolio into it, but it's still given us the massive amount of return compared to everything else. And number 3, gold. I love gold. Gold is an amazing asset class. Now I'm going to read out the narration. A time will come upon the people when there will be nothing left that will be of use except a dinar and a dirham. And that is attributed to the Prophet ﷺ and narrated by Musnad Ahmad and Sunan Ibn Majah, graded Hassan by Albani. Gold is a phenomenal asset class and it has such a high status in our deen that it has such a strong narration towards the end of time where nothing else will be of value. And the dinar is gold and the dirham is silver. Okay, so when we're investing into assets, we look at fundamental investing. We look at the fundamentals of that asset and we look at what builds that asset, what makes that asset what it is, and what makes it a good investment. Now, compared to other fundamentals, how much stronger fundamentals can you get than this narration from the Prophet ﷺ that is telling you towards the end of times, gold and silver will be the only thing that you can transact with? That's an incredibly powerful fundamental to invest into gold. And there's lots of other reasons why you might invest into gold. When there's economic downturns, recessions, etc., consistently and risk off assets like gold go up in value. So there's a lot of really, really good reasons to invest into gold. It's a phenomenal way to diversify your portfolio. Yeah, it's physical. It's like brick and mortar. It's like property. It's physical. You can hold it in your hand. And it's a phenomenal asset class. So definitely a good idea to invest into gold. But again, diversified in your portfolio of the rest of these asset classes. Now, asset class number 4 is property. Now, I don't need to tell you, I don't need to convince you, hopefully, that property is a good asset class. But there's so many different ways to invest into property. And what we've realized, now, like I mentioned before, that stocks is a little bit of a dubious one where you can invest into stocks, especially as someone who values ethical investing or Sharia-compliant investing. But you can't say that a lot of these companies on the stock market are 100% Sharia-compliant. Even if they're permissible, you can't say they're 100% halal because they're going to have a very small percentage of potentially haram income, even though it's been given a degree of permissibility by high-level ulama and scholars. But within property, it's much easier to find ways to invest into property that is 100% interest-free, 100% riba-free. For example, we have an amazing investor that we have access to within our agency called Sam. And what he does, just as a rough example, is that he takes on investors' capital. So he takes on say $100,000 per investor. He raises capital, say $2 million he will raise from investors. He will buy land. He will build a development on that land, say a residential development. As an example, he will spend 2-3 years building that development. He will get occupancy of that development to about, say, 70 to 80% occupancy. Once he's got 70, 80% occupancy contracted of that development, then he will sell that property to an institutional investor for massive profit, and he will be able to share that profit with his investors. That's a beautiful, completely interest-free business model where he is doing all the hard work for the investors. The investors are obviously putting up the capital, and he is able to create an amazing mutually beneficial agreement with the investors where he makes an amazing return and the investors get to get an incredible rate of return for their money. That's just one investment property, brick and mortar, that is 100% Sharia compliant, 100% riba free, 100% interest free, that we have access to within our agency. Now, we have 5 to 10 minimum of these kinds of models, slightly different models. We also have one of our own team members, Barry, who's absolutely incredible, who is able to help our clients buy property in the Middle East, in Dubai, in the UAE, also in the UK as well, completely riba free. He is able to negotiate out the late fees from the monthly payments, monthly installments, etc., and is able to help you buy maybe your first property in a beautiful country, warm, in a beautiful society like the Middle East, like the GCC region, completely interest-free. So I want you to get excited about property because property is amazing and you can absolutely invest into property completely interest-free, and it doesn't have to cost massive amounts of capital. There's ways that you can invest into property with only a small amount of money, say £1,000 a month or £2,000 a month. Like, for example, one of the ways that Barry, our team member, will be able to help you buy property in the Middle East, and it's one of the ways that a lot of these deals are structured. They'll be off plan. So these developers will be building the development, the residential development, and someone like Barry will help you get access to some of these apartments or developments in a really good area, because again, it really matters the area that you invest into. And you will potentially put down a deposit of 20%. Say he will help you find a studio apartment for $100,000 or £100,000. You'll put down a deposit of 20%, £20,000, and then you will pay off the rest of the installments every month at 1%. So £1,000 every month, installments at 1%. Completely interest-free. That is not massive for our clients anyway. That's not crazy amounts of money. That's very achievable. And then maybe after 2 or 3 years, once the development has finished and you are handed the keys, he can help you find a tenant for that apartment who ends up paying the lion's share of the installments. Again, that is just another way that we can help you get access to property in a way that is really easily accessible, that is completely interest-free. And I'm sure you can tell from my demeanor that it really excites me. Property is absolutely incredible. We have some incredible opportunities within our agency that we can give you access to. Number 5, businesses. Investing into businesses is absolutely incredible. Now, obviously, as a stock market investor, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to invest into businesses. But in terms of this is talking about individual businesses on a one-to-one level, maybe businesses that haven't reached the point of being hosted on the stock market just yet. So smaller businesses, maybe startups, angel investing, that kind of thing. And the thing that you need to understand about this is that you can absolutely find some incredible businesses, smaller companies to invest into, but these are higher risk. So if you invest 10, 20, 50,000 pounds, you can absolutely multiply that money potentially by many times if that business does really, really well. But you also have to understand that most new businesses fail. Most new businesses fail. Most new businesses fail 3 times. Make sure you understand that. Meaning that if you do put 10, 20, 50,000 pounds into this investment into a new business, it is most likely that you're going to lose that money. Obviously, we can do things like doing our absolute utmost due diligence to minimize that risk of losing the money. But even the top investors in the world still understand and they manage for that risk of losing their money. I'll give you an example. In February, I was sat in a room with an individual who manages a tech fund of $160 million. So he manages a fund that invests into tech startups, and the value that they invest into is $160 million. And the approach that he told me that he takes when he's looking at these new companies is that, say, every few years, he'll look at a group of 10 to 15 new tech startup companies, and he will do huge amounts of due diligence, and he will choose maybe 5 to 6 of these companies to invest into. And he approaches that understanding that most of these companies are going to fail, but he will make back his money from the 1 or 2 companies that actually make it. So he understands that he's going to lose all the money that he invests into 70 or 80% of the businesses, but from those 10 to 20% of the businesses, he is going to make massive returns that will more than cover the loss he's made from the companies that didn't succeed. But understand that this is someone who is literally the top of his field in due diligence of analyzing companies. And he has an entire team behind him to analyze the infrastructure and the financials of these new businesses. And as general investors, I'm going to be very honest, even after many, many years, you are probably not ever going to reach that level of being able to do the same amount of due diligence as that individual who's managing a fund of $160 million. So I definitely think that new businesses are a good investment. Please just understand that they are high risk. Do as much due diligence as possible and do not put anything more than around 5, maybe 10% of your investable income or your investable savings into high risk opportunities. Again, not financial advice. And lastly, investing into yourself. Listen, I would categorically say that investing into myself, I think I've invested easily over 6 figures into myself over the last few years. And that has categorically given me the highest rate of return compared to physical assets or investments, just investing into myself. So as dentists, we're no stranger to this. We invest into clinical courses. We understand that we're taking a massive shortcut, whether it's a composite course, whether it's a bonding course or a liner course, or it's a photography course, what you're doing, or even a high-level restorative diploma or implants, etc. What you're doing is that you are paying to take a massive shortcut. You're paying an expert in the field to teach you all of the mistakes that he made so that you don't make those mistakes, and teach you all of the things that he's learned that you can do that he has taken him maybe 5 or 10 or 15 years to learn. So that is the value of investing into yourself, the value of investing into a mentorship. So I promised to give you a plan of how to invest to become work optional. So what you are going to do is, first of all, you are going to pay off all of your debts, become debt free. That is the priority. Okay. You can invest later. Just become debt free and then you can invest later. And it's going to be so much better for you. Become debt free. Then set up an emergency fund. Then you need to start investing aggressively. Once you have your emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, there's no reason to have massive amounts of savings in cash because you have your emergency fund. That is what it's there for in the worst case scenario, to give you that safety net. If, for Allah protect you, you lose your source of income. Okay. So once you have your safety fund, you don't need to have massive amounts of savings. So you should be investing that. Okay. Meaning 80% of your income, hopefully, should be invested after that point. Again, not financial advice, but this is what I personally do. And you're going to invest consistently over the long term. You're going to understand, like an intelligent, smart, professional individual as you are, that investing is not a get rich quick scheme. It's going to take consistently. It's going to take 5, 10, 15 years. But I can promise you, if you are diligent, consistent, and you invest into this wide range of assets, you will get to that point of being work optional where you can choose to work or not to work in a few years' time. If you do that, then you will be able to reap all of the rewards that come with it, being able to spend the quality time with your children, that you deserve to spend maybe location independent so that you can leave the country that is cold and has massively ridiculous high rates of crime and terrible roads and horrible government monetary policies, and who clearly the politicians don't care about you, they just care about lining their own pockets. Leave that country and come to a beautiful country where the weather is warm, where you get vitamin D, where your family, where your wife, where your parents, where your children can walk the streets late at night and feel 100% secure and safe, and not like they have to watch their back constantly because of some random act of violence. This is the value of being diligent, being consistent, working hard, investing consistently. And this is what I want for you. So if you have seen any value in what I've spoken about today in this mini course, then I want you to know that we have built a system from the ground up, targeted directly for individuals like yourself. If you are a dentist, a doctor, a high net worth professional, there is a minimum entry. You have to be making a certain amount before we can take you on as a client. Our application process is very strict. We only take on a very small number of individuals as clients. But if you qualify as one of our clients, I am so happy to say that we have built a system that just works. It just works. Follow the system. Do what we tell you to do. It's not going to be ridiculously hard. It's going to involve a little bit of hard work, and you just need to be patient. And our system will just work for you, inshallah ta'ala. And I am very excited to see maybe in a few years that you will be here with me in a beautiful place like this. Today, we're filming in custom-made reality tailoring in Dubai, which is run by my really good friend, Jewel. And there are many settings like this that I hope you can join me at, and we can sit and we can play a game of pool, we can have a coffee together, and we can discuss the lives that we previously led when we were grafting bent over teeth all day, drilling, and we were seeing 40 patients a day, and we were stressed, and we had that BS GDC case that we were worrying about. Inshallah, very soon, that is all going to be in the past for you. Assalamu alaikum.